Welcome to It's Always Sunny in, I guess, France this time. I'm your host, Drumarts. Want you to introduce yourselves.
My name is Patrick.
And I'm Lugia, and I cannot speak a lick of French aside from bonjour and oui baguette.
We got no yucks this time around for the intro.
Yeah,
No, not certainly not with this film, but
yeah.
we'll get to that.
So just starting off with a little bit of film news. William Friedkin passed away. Legendary director, probably one of the most significant passings we've ever talked about on the show. He's probably best known for directing the original Exorcist, which, we've talked about the sequel on here, not the original, but yeah, rest in peace, William Friedkin. He's directed actually a lot of significant films. To Live and Die in L.A., The French Connection, Sorcerer. He was a real significant filmmaker throughout his life, and his final film actually comes out later this year. So
What's it called?
the Kane Mutiny Court Martial.
Ah,
It's a
okay.
legal drama.
I've not heard of that one.
It's apparently coming out in like September in Venice. I don't know when it's the like wide release is gonna happen. Probably later.
So is this one of those Oscar bait movies, like an award season contender, if it's getting like a limited release and then later?
Yeah, probably. I mean, that's just what most films that aren't blockbusters are nowadays. So I guess. It's apparently an adaptation of a play. It is like Friedkin, like his movies aren't like he's a dude that knows how to do a crowd pleaser. Because the French Connection, that's just like an action movie. Exorcist is a horror classic. Sorcerer is kind of like Apocalypse Now. It's like a war flick. Cruising is like a horror thriller. To Live and Die in L.A., it's basically like Heat. It's kind of like a Michael Mann movie action flick. So he's got a pretty big range. He also, well, a few other people passed away. Johnny Hardwick, who's probably best known as the voice actor of Dale Gribble from King of the Hill, he also passed away. I don't know how familiar you are all with King of the Hill.
I've
I've
s-
never watched King of the Hill.
I've seen a couple episodes here and there.
It's a pretty good show, and he's one of like the best characters in it. So it's a real shame. I know there's some people are kind of hoping they kind of drop their plans to make the King of the Hill revival because that was a thing that's gonna happen. Because a lot of people are like they just don't see how the show would like really work with both Dale and Luann's actors now having passed. And the last death of note is of Robbie Robertson, who's he's a musician who made this band called The Band, which is I know a little bit confusing, but he's done a lot of significant work. He was like a pretty well known musician in his time. He worked with Bob Dylan, but he also worked on film and TV scores and soundtracks. So he worked with he's actually one of Martin Scorsese's big collaborators. Working with him on Raging Bull, King of Comedy, Casino, The Wolf of Wall Street, The Irishman, and the movie he's releasing this year, Killers of the Flower Moon. So all three people that actually passed away have like some upcoming thing coming out, which is kind of interesting, I guess. And then let's jump into the film. Yeah, we talked about death and we talked about a trial movie, so that's kind of convenient. But
Correct me if
yeah, the
I'm
past
wrong, but I think this beats out Throne of Blood as our oldest movie that we've talked about.
It absolutely does. This movie is nearly 100 years old.
yeah, this is the Passion of Joan of Arc or La Passion de Jeanne d'Arc is a 1928 French silent historical film,
So 95 years.
and is based off the actual recorded trial of Joan of Arc. For those who aren't familiar with Joan of Arc, she's basically a patron saint of France. She fought during the Hundred Years' War, and she kind of did like a Mulan thing where she was a woman that pretended to be a man. Well, actually, I'm not actually sure what the real life or like the story Mulan is like, but unlike the Mulan movie where she was honored and they had a fairy tale happy ending. Joan, there was a lot more controversy surrounding Joan when it was revealed she was a
This,
woman. Although, is Mulan a fictional character? Like I can't remember.
uh, Mulan is kind of like it's kind of like Robin Hood, where I don't
A
think
Chinese
there's
legend.
a yeah.
So
Yeah, it's a folk
not
hero.
real then.
Okay, yeah. Joan of Arc is a real person. Like I want to make that very clear. She was an actual person. Um, this was actually like directly taken from like the physical recordings, like ancient like of people wrote down of the trial of Joan of Arc. So this is like what you saw here
So it's
actually
completely
happened.
authentic. So it's completely authentic from the
Pretty
records.
much, yeah.
Huh.
I know like some of the earlier cuts, you know, there was some censorship back in the day, but I do believe the version I saw and the version you guys saw, I'm pretty sure was the uncut director's cut, you know, whatever it's called.
The
Um,
2015 restoration.
whatever it's called, yeah.
I don't know what version
Uh,
I saw, but I do know the runtime was like an hour 10 minutes.
An hour and 10 minutes. Okay, yeah, that was about mine. I think mine was
And
like
mine was around there too. I think it was like an hour 20 though.
yeah, something around there.
Give or take.
I saw the Criterion Collection release. Which ones did you guys see?
I saw the one on Amazon Prime.
The free one.
Yeah.
I checked that one out too. I do believe that was different just because that's an hour 40 minutes. Wait one second.
Yeah, but like 30 minutes is credits.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah,
Like,
that one is
I was kind of taken aback. Movie ended. I'm like, wait, what? Oh, it's just okay.
is that the version you saw too, Lugia?
No, I saw the one that you sent me. I think it was the same one you saw.
Yeah, so the one Patrick saw.
No, you did.
I'm bringing it up because there are differences just given it's a silent film, so like a lot of restorations have like you saw okay, so you saw the version I saw, the Criterion Collection release. Okay. So just to I guess put you up to speed, Patrick, the only difference because I checked out both versions, the only difference is the version that Lugia saw had a different score, basically. I will say if you ever see it again, I would recommend you see the Criterion release because I do think that score is much better. I feel like the version you saw had much more of like a Transylvania thing going on, where this one had much more of like this epic choir.
Did, and that actually brings up something I wanted to say. According to this film's Wikipedia page, there's like a whole section dedicated to different musical accompaniments.
Yes.
There's
So the
like
version
how many different versions of this movie are there based on music alone?
So the thing is basically just like, you know, back in the day of silent eras, this was like before synchronized sound was a thing. So like people would just play music at the, you
Yeah,
know,
they
in the
have
theater.
piano.
It would be
They have
live.
piano. They've had pianos. I've actually been to a movie theater where they had like a piano. Like they didn't actually use the piano. It's like a modern theater, but they had a piano in the front of it, just I guess
Yeah.
like to show like what theaters used to be like.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know what you're talking about. They would play the music while the movie played.
Live. Yeah. But the version that's on the Criterion Collection release is the was actually scored years after the director passed away, but it's got much more of like a biblical epic feel, you know, kind of like with the choir and it's I think it's great. I think it accompanies the film fantastically, but I'm
And
curious like how did the Transylvania thing kind of like affect the experience for you?
I thought it was great.
Okay, so it's still good. All right, good.
Mhm. Like, I'm not surprised if there's like a few different versions of music, but this one lists like 30.
Like 30
Yeah,
separate
yeah.
It's like
soundtracks or
like
just 30 songs?
no, it lists like the differences in musical accompaniment since 1968.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
it goes over like in 1982, 1983, 88, 94, 2003, and there's
Yeah,
like the
well,
most recent one is 2022.
yeah. The thing is, though, most of these are all just kind of like live performances that are just significant, not like actual like recording stuff. So like in terms of like
Ah,
stuff you're gonna get, it's mostly just gonna be kind of like the thing that you heard or the thing that I heard.
still
Like
the
one of
best.
them is like this one dude who played like a live score on guitar at like some Burning Man festival. It was like one Burning Man's a little tasteless, but uh, like you know that's not like something that you're gonna like be able to get or whatever. It's just kind of like this. It was basically like a significant concert playing
Gotcha,
of it
gotcha,
with like a
gotcha.
lot of people. Yeah. But anyway, yeah. Enough with the score. Basically, so the director was a Carl von Theodor Dreyer, who was he wasn't actually French. He was from Denmark, but he was invited by France to make a film about Joan of Arc because she had a renewed popularity in the time. I don't know what was going on in 1920s France for the said revival and popularity, but yeah, the Dreyer spent a year researching Joan of Arc, going through the transcripts of her trial, written before writing the script, and then cast as stage actress Falconetti as Joan in her only major film role. it's funny. So she mostly just stuck to doing a live theater, but her performance as Joan, and I'm sure you can kind of tell, it became significant. She kind of was like one of like those incredibly influential actors just because of how good her performance was. The style focused a lot on close ups, so you really emphasize the face and whatnot. Apparently he also didn't allow the actors to wear makeup and use like the harsh kind of lighting to make all the actors look a bit more grotesque. Film was controversial at the time because people were more touchy about like the different like cultural differences and stuff. So a lot of people are like, "Oh, could a Danish person really direct a story about a French historical icon?" A lot more like nationalism at the time, which is less than it is now. So yeah, but yeah, it was incredibly successful. When it ultimately did release, and it's widely considered to be one of the greatest films of all time. In 1958, the film was voted number 4 on the Brussels 12 list, which is this basically kind of like this World Fair or whatever. This is basically kind of the production history of it. What did y'all think?
But what's it about?
Well, it's basically just like a courtroom drama. So we don't see any of like the early history of Joan of Arc. It's just entirely after. It's entirely about her trial after her campaigns in the Hundred Years' War. She's standing trial for heresy due to it's a very religious film, kind of and yeah, religion obviously back in the 1300s or it might have been
This
1400s,
1400s
was
at that time.
15th
Yeah,
century.
So yeah, 1400s.
Yeah, so in the 1400s, yeah, 1431. Okay, so yeah. Obviously around that time, religion was a lot more held a lot more significant role in the day-to-day lives of people, and people were a lot more strict about, I guess, interpretations and whatnot. But yeah, society was just like fundamentally different. Because of that, she stood trial for heresy, and it's basically like her interrogation, kind of like them trying to determine, whether her faith is, what her like true belief is, and kind of like exploring,
Was she sent by God or was she sent by the devil?
basically she just kind of stands resolute for the whole time. And there's this interesting moment at the end though where she kind of due to fear of death, she briefly signs a confession, but then pretty much immediately recants it because she doesn't want to betray God. And there's this kind of like idea of like what her mission was, and then at the end they kind of suggest that her death is because they specifically say at one point that she has this mission to save France, and God will free her and all this stuff, and then ultimately you kind of learn at the end that this mission is her becoming a martyr. So to sort of invigorate the French people, and her death is her being freed by God, which it was an interesting ending, and you see this at the end because as she passes, the people see her, and they don't see her as a heretic, they see her as a saint, and a riot ensues. So what did you think? I guess first, silent film has a very different kind of like language to talk film. They do give you the dialogue that's said, but they don't always give you all of it, and like kind of let
Yeah,
you
that's
just
the first thing I
observe the
noticed.
faces.
So
Yeah, same here.
I think it was done because they already assumed like you would know what they're saying anyway, not from their lip movements, but from their facial expressions. Like when they're angry,
Yeah,
it's like
and you do. There's this one point where she very clearly like she has a kind of enlightened face on her, and she says one word, and like obviously she said yes, and yeah, you can kind of and it's like,
Mhm.
and it makes sense because you wouldn't want to like cut away at every single like dialogue because it would kind of like ruin the momentum,
yeah.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
actually from the beginning, I thought it would just be we would only get title cards for what Joan said because for the first like 2 minutes, it's just what she's saying and nobody else. But then we get perspectives of other people.
Imagine if they did take that direction though.
That would be ballsy, but I also think it might be a bit confusing.
I mean, if they stay consistent with it, it probably wouldn't be that much. But yeah.
You could have done an Oppenheimer thing, like the main character's point of view and the subjective point of view. But
Apparently Oppenheimer's script was written in a first person point of view, which is kind of funny. I thought a lot of obviously the performances were like pretty compelling, especially because like I think the choice of like using all the close-ups was like really smart because it really kind of like emphasizes like the small facial tics and stuff, and especially was interesting because at the time acting like that wasn't really like commonplace. Everything was still very much in a the theater type things, and the performance is very theatrical, but the emphasis of the face and all these like micro expressions and stuff, that's not really something you can do on a play because you're obviously you can't see the people on the stages, their faces clearly. So
But
this
here
was
you can't hear what they're saying, so having those close-ups and being able to make out those details is necessary because there's no vocal dialogue.
You know what they say when
yeah.
you know what they say when you lose one sense, all your other senses get
Yeah.
heightened.
I don't know if you guys like felt this and but when I watched this, I kind of felt like the storytelling reminded me of a lot of like animation, like an
Really?
anime or whatnot, because every like movement in animation is a lot more significant than a movement in like live action because like they like change expression like it's hand drawn and it's just kind of inherently emphasized. You can't when like live action you don't like really register some things because it's just kind of natural, but like in animation you only really moved when it's like significant.
I was kind of reminded of anime in how a lot of the time the characters are just kind of standing there, just focused on their face, and you can tell with their eyes, especially with Joan, that there's a lot going on inside.
Yeah.
I
It
was
was
reminded
like
of anime from that point.
anime specifically. Like I feel like American animation we kind of approach things a little different, but like this specifically did remind me of anime. And I
I
wonder
can
if
see
like
it.
because like the French have like storytelling like this. I wonder if like that's why like anime, the first country anime really got popular and in the West was France. So 'cause the storytelling is kind of similar. I thought the characters were kind of interesting because like you got Joan, then you got all these like priests who and all these judges, and they themselves aren't sure. You got some people that are like a lot more resolute. There's like, no, absolutely, she's a heretic, and then others are like, well, let's hear her out. You got the that one priest that one scene I thought was really interesting was like the one where she kept looking at the priest because and the priest was kind of like guiding her answers, but then eventually she gets stuck. Like they put a question. He doesn't like know the answer, so he just kind of looks away to try to like avoid culpability. And I was kind of like, I was thinking like, is he trying to avoid culpability or was he like deliberately leading her into a trap? And I was kind of interesting trying to think that one through. And it was like, now think about it, that's kind of interesting choice from the director because the director he was looking at the transcript, but like something like that, you know, I don't think someone's gonna be like writing down that Joan looked at this one priest and the priest like nodded his head. So that was something he added in. It's like, okay, interesting,
Something to add to the
interesting
drama.
interpretation. No, yeah, I got. I mean, I thought it was like compelling from like a character perspective, but now I am wondering like how much
How much of that was true or
because it might have been true, but it also might have just been like his interpretation of things. It was like I don't know. We'll have to see. I don't know if those I mean I'm sure the recorded trial is probably like public record, but
so before we saw this, you two said you never saw this movie?
I have never seen this movie before.
Okay.
Yeah.
Patrick, aside from what we said, what are your thoughts?
This is honestly a really difficult film to talk about, at least from my perspective, because it is genuinely so well crafted from every angle and every aspect that I feel like I can't say anything substantial.
That's one of those movies. It's
One of
it's
those
so good to
movies.
the point where we can't talk about it.
Yeah, I
I feel like
honestly thought.
we've gotten a lot. I feel like we've talked a lot
No,
about it.
I honestly feel like this was going to be another Social Network where we spent more time on tangents than the actual movie. But no, like the fact that how far into the recording are we?
24 minutes.
4 minutes. Given that
Yeah,
like 20 of
and
those
we didn't
minutes,
have the news this
no,
time.
Well,
Like
we
like
we
20,
had a couple
like
things.
20 of those minutes have been
so,
dedicated towards the movie. I'm like impressed.
I just think it's just because like inherently just like this has like such a distinct kind of visual style, and given that's a silent film, the visuals have like such more of an emphasis. We're kind of able to talk more about it because the language of silent films is just kind of inherently different from the language of talkies. So granted, I think we do have a bit more experience with silent films than I think like the average person because like I'm sure we've all seen like Charlie Brown. I mean, not Charlie Brown, not Charlie
Charlie
Chaplin,
Chaplin.
and a lot of the earlier Looney Tunes stuffs were completely silent and whatnot.
No
Like
question.
Tom and Jerry,
Yeah,
duh. It's the
Luke,
obvious
yeah,
one.
have you seen any other silent films other than this one?
I saw
Excluding-
Metropolis.
Oh, Metropolis. I have not seen that one either.
The only other silent movie I've seen, I think it's called The Conductor. It's about a guy trying to get his train back in a war. You guys know that one?
I'm
I
not.
think I'm thinking of something else.
I'm like 90% sure it's called The Conductor.
I think it's called Conductor 1492, and it's
Hold up, let me look up. Conductor 1492.
when I typed in Conductor silent film, this was the first result. I will say this is the first dramatic silent film I've seen. All the other silent films I've seen were I've seen a lot of silent films, but they were all comedic. You know, like Buster Keaton's Sherlock Jr. and Charlie Chaplin's like Modern Times or City Lights, all that stuff.
Remember there was like this one silent film I saw where it's like a guy on top of a building. I don't
Oh,
remember what it
Safety
was
Last.
called. That's
Safety
what it was
Last. Harold
called?
Lloyd.
Okay.
Yeah, Harold Lloyd. Yeah, I've seen that too. Yeah, I've seen most of like the films from like the big three silent comedians, and I've also seen a little bit of the Little Rascals.
I'm
Outside
still
of that,
trying to I'm still trying to figure out if the movie you said is the movie I think it is.
The Conductor?
Here, I can send you the YouTube link, and you can just kind of scan through it. Again, though, I do think
The
like
movie is it's the middle of a war, and this guy is trying to get his train back, and like they legitimately blow up a bridge at one point, and a train drives off it.
Okay, one sec.
It's been years since I saw it though.
Is it the General Buster Keaton?
All right, Conductor 1492 is not it. I'm looking at clips. It does not look familiar. The General,
I think it's
is
the
that
General
the-
Buster Keaton. Yeah, because now
General.
that you actually like describe it, I'm like, oh, I've seen that movie before. It's The General by Buster Keaton. Yeah.
Yes, it is. This is the one. The
General?
The General.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, that's a comedy. Yeah. Okay. Great. Yeah.
Yes.
Buster
This
Keaton.
is the only other silent movie I have seen.
Yeah. I mean, that's a damn good one. The General by Buster Keaton. That's like the Buster Keaton movie. Like that's his most popular one. And like in terms of his comedies, I think like Sherlock Jr. is considered his best. So, yeah. Like
Now here's the tangent I was expecting this episode to have.
yeah. I mean, we might as well like talk about like some of the other silent films we've seen because like I do think it's like kind of interesting that like one of the reasons I picked Joan of Arc specifically was because of it was one of the more significant dramatic silent films out there. When I feel like
you also said you didn't want to be obvious.
yeah, and like the Fritz Lang ones were like Metropolis is like probably the most obvious silent film you could pick. That's not a comedy. I feel like when it comes to like the silent film comedies, our discussion would very obviously just become about the slapstick and whatnot, and like that kind of visual style hasn't really faded away. Like a lot of the silent comedies, that art form hasn't entirely died. Like everyone's seen Mr. Bean, and Mr. Bean very much like holds the tradition of the silent masters. Actually, going through my list of all the silent films, I actually have seen a few more than I thought. The one I saw this one called "I Was Born But." It was from 1932. It's directed by Yasuhiro Ozu. So yeah, I have seen that one. I also saw the remake, "Good Morning." In fact, "Good Morning" was the first movie of his I saw, and I liked it so much. I'm like, when I checked the Wikipedia page, it was like it's a loose remake of his earlier film, "I Was Born But." So I watched that. I'm gonna have to say, they aren't remakes. They're completely different fucking movies. They just both center around kids. They're nothing alike. Like I don't get what the fuck are they talking about. They're not similar at all. Like they just both feature like similar kid characters. It's like saying like the Peanuts movie is a remake of like I don't know like one of the earlier Peanuts movies is like kind of like not really like there's some shared elements.
He's
Obviously,
remaking something from the ground up to the point where it's unrecognizable.
They both got the football gag, but like that doesn't mean that they're the same movie. We'll talk about Ozu some other day though. Ozu will be interesting because he's one of those filmmakers that he had a lot of like early significant films in silent, but most of his significant stuff was in sound. So his most famous movie, Tokyo Story, that came out 53, full sound. Similar to Hitchcock, although I would say like I don't think Hitchcock dabbled like nearly as much in silent film as like most people did. Yeah, silent film's certainly interesting. I did think it would be funny. This is some more behind the scenes things, but at one point I did consider because I feel like outside of Metropolis and the comedies, the most well known silent films are like the German expressionist horror films, like Dr. Caligari and Nosferatu. And I was like, should I recommend Nosferatu? Because in case you don't know, there is currently another Nosferatu movie in theaters.
Really?
Yeah, right, like right now in theaters. The Last Voyage of the Demeter.
Oh yes, that movie.
Yeah.
That one.
It is basically what they did is like if you haven't if you aren't familiar with the actual Dracula book or the Dracula story, there is a brief part in the towards the beginning of the film or of the story where Dracula takes a ship called the Demeter for England, and it's only like a brief part, but basically I guess this person saw that and was like, what if we just made like Alien but it was on a boat, and instead of the xenomorph it was Nosferatu.
So the
And I
abyss
was like,
on the surface.
yeah. I was like, that sounds like a good idea. Like I've heard mixed things about it, but the thing is, like every horror movie gets mixed reviews, so it might be good. Who knows? And I specifically say Nosferatu instead of Dracula, just because the design of Dracula they use in the trailer is so clearly based off Nosferatu, not like the more classic American depictions of
Nosferatu.
Brad
Dracula.
Pitt-ish.
That Nosferatu, that light flickering scamp.
I do think it's kind of hilarious then SpongeBob, for the vast majority of people in the world of like Generation Z.
No, people of our generation know Nosferatu because of that one gag.
Yep.
Yeah. I know it's funny. When I was a kid, I did not know that his name was Nosferatu because in case if you guys don't remember, Teletubbies used to have this they would be like, "Oh, naughty Nunu." I thought they were saying that, and then the fucked up monster was just like part of the joke, and I was like, "That's not like the guy from Teletubbies." I was like, I completely misunderstood the joke, but I still thought it was funny.
Did you just connect Teletubbies to Nosferatu?
I'd believe it.
Yes, with SpongeBob. Yeah, there's a theory
Why do you
that
think the sun has a face? That's God.
the sun having that was actually another. Speaking of sun having a face, that was another thing I was planning on recommending, and that's the George Méliès film, A Journey to the Fantastic, whatever it's called, Journey to the Moon, I think.
From Earth to Moon?
But I decided against that just because A Trip to the Moon, that's what it's called. So I was initially going to recommend that, but then I decided against it because when I looked it up, it was 20 minutes long. Like not even. It's a 10-minute movie. It is short as shit. And I was like, "Oh, okay, never mind." I was like, maybe I could like show multiple George Méliès things, but then I was like, I have a better idea. In the future, I'm gonna recommend the Martin Scorsese movie Hugo because it's all about George Méliès, and I was just like, okay, we can watch like this regular like under 2 hour movie, and then I'll be like, okay, and now we're just gonna watch the actual like movie like for 10 minutes because it's only 10 minutes.
Would that
And then
count
we could,
as a
like,
double feature by
I guess
technicality?
it would. Here,
Hardly
what
a
count as
double that's hardly a double feature. That's like a short before the movie.
Would it count as a triple feature if I played the Smashing Pumpkins music video Tonight? Because the Smashing Pumpkins music video Tonight is just a remake of A Trip to the Moon. Straight up like that. That's how I learned about the Smashing Pumpkins because like when I saw Hugo,
Well,
I was
isn't
like,
that
I need to
even
look
shorter?
at George Méliès.
Yeah, no,
It is
that,
shorter. It's
what
4
that
minutes.
is, that is a short film with a movie and a post-credit scene.
Yeah, it's like a montage and yeah.
It's a Hugo sandwich.
I guess what I have actually seen A Trip to the Moon. I just forgot how short it was because So,
Is
yeah.
that based on the Jules Verne novel?
It is. It is based off the
I
Jules
read
Verne.
the novel. I read the novel in middle school.
Yeah, it's called the From the Earth
From
to the
Earth
Moon.
to Moon. Yeah.
And also the sequel Around the Moon. Yeah.
I
Jules
did not
Verne
read
is
I did not read the
I
sequel.
love Jules Verne.
I read the original book. They don't even make it to the moon.
I guess that's why they adapted the sequel too, because I think in the sequel they actually do make it to the moon.
That is what you call
I love
false
Jules Verne.
advertising.
Yeah, I love Jules Verne. He's great. So back to Passion of Joan of Arc, actually. Yeah, we get to the tangent.
It's funny how I said this episode was not going the way I planned, and then after I said that, it went the way I thought it would.
So what's funny is so I mentioned Nosferatu, and he didn't direct Nosferatu, but he did direct this movie called Vampire, and it's his second most popular film after Passion of Joan of Arc. Although I do believe this film was this was a sound film. It's kind of interesting. This was a sort of a mix of sound and silent, which there are a couple transitional films. That's another something because I know there's this one Howard Hawks movie where it's like whatchamacallit, it was mostly filmed in silent, but halfway through production, sound technology became like accessible to him, so he started to film it in sound. So it's this weird hybrid where like of both, and it's like that's really interesting. I also considered recommending a D.W. Griffith movie, but I did not know where to start there because I am not recommending his most popular film because his most popular film is a 3-hour hate crime. But the rest of his movies are apparently pretty good. So yeah, back to I guess the Passion of Joan of Arc.
Can we talk for a minute about the scene where her arm gets cut?
Yes, I was impressed by that
Jesus
fact.
Christ. Like, okay, I've seen like cuts in movies before, but this is like they search for her vein, they cut it, and it's like a water fountain into the pan.
Yeah,
That like made
that
me wince. Like, it's an impressive effect, especially for the time, but Jesus Christ.
yeah.
Did it
I was
irk
like,
you?
Yeah,
it threw me
it
off a
did.
little, yeah. Just because like because of like the close up, like they show like a lot of details, so like you kind of like
And
and the
again,
way
they
they like
deliberately
specifically showed it,
search
there's like
for a vein.
yeah, it's a lot more like I guess uncomfortable than like I would have expected. Like part of it is just because it was a silent film, like I just didn't expect that. Because like there's another movie with the passion in the title, and that's significantly more gory and uncomfortable, but like it's still like you know, you expect like a 2000s movie to like be able to have that. I'm trying to think if there's like other movies like this I know where like it's about someone's life, but it's like specifically about like the end of their life. Like the last moment is like specifically like this little microcosm because like I feel like if you made like a modern Joan of Arc movie, it'd be like you know this full kind of like it would be like about her entire life, not just this like one moment. Like there's the Passion of the Christ, which is effectively like the same thing. Like obviously, I think that's why he named it the Passion of the Christ. But
As a reference to this.
yeah. But also, I think like the Passion that's like that might be an actual term, you know.
Would all that jazz fit into that category?
Um,
Yeah, kinda. It is definitely like about like a certain like specific moment in his life. Yeah, I would say so.
It does end with him dying, so
Yeah, yeah. Because I do feel like it's not to say there aren't like biopics that do focus on like specific moment, like the Brian Wilson biopic Love and Mercy, like it's specifically about two parts of his life. It's not like an overview of his whole life. We don't see like the rise of the Beach Boys. We just see the making of Pet Sounds and Good Vibrations and his struggles escaping from his conservatorship. And those are the only two things we focus on in his life. You know, compared to like Bohemian Rhapsody, which you know focused on everything. Like even Oppenheimer, like 90% just focused on the making of the bomb and after, but that also did kind of show like his life before it and like some in between. So like Oppenheimer was kind of like an overview of his entire life. Although it was delivered in a much more interesting way than like a biopic typically is. Like yeah. Oh, I just like it like
it didn't really go over the end of his life, just kind of how he came to grips with what he did.
yeah.
I mean,
he doesn't die at any point.
yeah, well, there's another thing. Like sometimes, like biopics, like sometimes the way a person dies just isn't interesting. They just like have like a normal death. A lot of like music biopics, they tend to like specifically focus on like tragic figures in music, just because like specifically because you know their death is something. Like the Straight Outta Compton movie, it obviously ends when Eazy-E dies because you know he's like one of the main guys of Straight Outta Compton. So you know, same with, like Bohemian Rhapsody. But then you got stuff like Rocket Man, where one, Elton John is still alive, so obviously you can't end it on his death, but like they instead ended on like some emotional thing. Then Elvis, I'm bringing up music biopics just because music is like the biopics that typically cover the entire life. But yeah,
Have they ever made like a biopic about Jimi Hendrix?
they have. It actually stars Andre 3000, which is kind of funny.
Did the
Andre
movie
3000.
Did the movie end with how he died?
I don't know. Let me
I
pull it up on
I doubt it
Wikipedia.
would because he died in his sleep choking on his own vomit.
Yeah, I mean I doubt they'd show it, you know, but
Yeah,
yeah,
I would too. I'm just curious, like
yeah.
how it ended.
Like obviously, if they make a Kurt Cobain biopic, they're not gonna show that because
Obviously not.
yeah. But like, you know, they'll certainly like get to the end of his life. They just won't like actually show the. I don't think any like movies really show the cause of death. Like even like
Usually text. Usually it ends with like a performance. Like again, going back to musical biopics, it usually ends with like a performance or something or a falling out, and
it
then
ends on a
text.
high.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then a text.
Like Bohemian Rhapsody, I think ended on Live Aid, and then
And Elvis
Mm.
ended with the death of Tom. With the end of Tom Parker. Was that his name?
Yeah,
The snowman.
Colonel Tom Parker. Yeah.
Yes, Tom Parker. It ended with him dying, and then text
Yeah.
explaining everything else.
Yeah. My favorite biopic actually is Amadeus. Now to think about it,
Which one was that?
it was the one about Wolfgang Mozart. I think it's a masterpiece.
1984 Best Picture winner.
Yeah, I think it's a masterpiece. I think it's, and I think that's a bit more comparable to Joan of Arc, actually, a little bit more than some of these other ones, because even though like that is about Mozart's whole life, it certainly gets more into the psychology of things a bit more. I also think Amadeus is much better than most because like I feel like with a lot of biopics, the issue is always that it's they're basically just giving like a visual like Wikipedia summary, and it doesn't actually like capture a vibe. Like I think Elvis is one of the better Wikipedia things because even though like it's about his life, it presents it in this such a hectic way to really like and this large chaotic way that really like embodies what like Elvis's persona was all about, which I think
Hey,
is good.
when you want large and chaotic, who better to get than Baz Luhrmann, right?
Yeah. Yeah, Love and Mercy was like focused very much on Brian Wilson's like obsession and mental illness. Oppenheimer, that's a great one, and like that's very much ruminates on like his guilt. Like that's what I think like a good like biopic should do, like really ruminate on the characters. And that's why I think even though Joan of Arc only focuses on the last legs of her life, it's really good because it specifically like focus on like her faith and everything about like despite being so short, like again, it's like under 90 minutes long. Like you really get like a full kind of like understanding of her psychology, and I think that's incredibly compelling.
And how the very system that she, well, used to believe in betrays her.
Here's the thing: I don't think it does because ultimately she believes in God.
Yeah, but everyone else, the clergymen and the judges, see her as like a.
Yeah, she is condemned. Yeah, it is very interesting. I don't know if you guys have seen First Reformed, but
No.
okay, First Reformed and the Bergman film Winter Light. I feel like both of those are also kind of like interesting ruminations on faith. They're about priests who kind of like lose faith a little bit and they get kind of like nihilistic about the end of the world. And they're very different, but they have like a very similar kind of like visual language to it all, and a similar that one ruminates more in like the doubt of things a lot more than this, but they just kind of remind me of each other a lot. So like I guess like if you like Pastor Joan of Arc, check out those two films, and obviously Last Temptation of Christ, Passion of the Christ, those ones. Obviously, those are all very religious films. I can't really think of any non-religious films that are comparable. I guess I don't know, 12 Angry Men. Not really, but that's the best I could think of.
The biggest comparison I got was Oppenheimer because that also jumps with the trial, and also both Cillian Murphy and the woman who plays Joan here, I'm sorry, I forget her name. Both of their eyes are like,
yeah.
You just look at their eyes, and you automatically see like.
There's a lot of memes that Cillian Murphy looks biblical as hell. I don't know if you've seen that meme. But like there's this one image of Cillian Murphy where he looks exactly like Joan of Arc in this movie does.
Random question: you guys have seen Get Out, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Her eyes also look like when you're in the sunken place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Exactly. Almost exactly like it with the tears and everything.
I love that scene so much.
Get Out is great.
Which we're watching now.
Yeah, for what it's worth, I recently rewatched Nope. I am still confused.
I still think Nope's Jordan Peele's best movie.
Who knows? That's maybe one day. I almost chose it last week, but no. Phil Niblink is more important.
Yeah.
Anyway,
priorities.
Yes, priorities. Do we have anything else to add about Joan of Arc?
There was just one more thing I want to. Oh, right. So I brought up Amadeus. I brought up Amadeus because I thought that was like an interesting take on the biopic because it was more so as even though it was called Amadeus and it was all about Amadeus's life, the main character was Salieri and it was really about his jealousy and obsession. And I thought that was interesting. So yeah, I always think there's like if you're gonna do a biopic, either like focus it on like a microcosm of a moment in someone's life, or take like an interesting like perspective or like execution. Yeah, I guess I don't got much more to say. Yeah, this was It's Always Sunny in Hollywood.
But the episode's not over.
It's not over?
No, because Lugia needs to choose the next movie.
All right. What is
this
your
how-
recommendation?
I was gonna say, is this how we end the whole podcast? Like we
Is this
stop here
it just ends right here with
Yeah.
in a blaze
Joan of
of
Arc.
glory to the stake.
Yeah. Okay. What is your recommendation for next week?
Okay. Now before I make this next recommendation, I have a question.
Mhm.
When was the last time we talked about a Pixar movie?
Turning
Have
Red.
we ever talked about a Pixar
Turning
movie?
Red. Turning Red. You always forget Turning Red.
All right. We've talked about Turning Red like twice too. That's the funny part. Okay. Right.
You talked about it once because when you first saw it, and then I'm like, I want to give this its own thing. So Pixar. All right, this is round 2.
All right, and this movie is one that I've been very familiar with as a kid. Probably you guys too, but for next week, I just got one word for you.
Yeah.
Ka-chow.
Cars. Oh,
Oh boy.
now when recording, I can finally immortalize that stupid joke I made.
Oh god.
We're only gonna talk about the first one. I'm not
The
interested
first
in doing the
Cars.
sequels.
I have still not seen Cars 3.
First
I'm
one's all
gonna,
right.
you know what? I'm gonna watch Cars 3 and I'm gonna watch Doc Hollywood just because I'm curious.
Cars 3
Uh,
is not bad. It's not great, but it's not bad.
Yeah. Are you too familiar with Doc Hollywood?
I've
No.
heard the comparisons made to Cars, but I've never seen it
Yeah.
myself.
Yeah, so a lot of like early Pixar movies were kind of like remakes. So, like A Bug's Life is basically a remake of Seven Samurai, and apparently Cars is a remake of Doc Hollywood. I've never seen Doc Hollywood. I assume that they named Doc Hudson after Doc Hollywood. But yeah, I guess I will try to watch that. Although I'm just gonna focus on the actual Cars film. Don't worry.
It's
I'm
been...
asking, what made you decide Cars?
I don't know. I just haven't seen it in a long time.
Yeah.
And I remember that it was not like a significant part of my childhood, but I remember like as a kid, like I would like get most of the merchandise I could get my hands on. I mean,
Yeah, I remember. I too collected a lot of.
I was in my single digits when I
Yeah.
saw this movie, and I thought like, "Yo, they're cars. They talk. They're animated.
Yeah. No.
The funny car says ka-chow."
Listen, the reason that there are 3 Cars movies is because Pixar makes an obscene amount of money from Cars merch.
I was part of the problem. Understood.
As was I. As was
I
I.
wonder if like I wonder if Pixar ever punches themselves that they didn't like make more Incredibles toys. Because like I had some Incredibles toys, like an action figure and like the Mr. Incredibles car, but like there wasn't like nearly as much.
I had the Happy Meals Incredibles toys, but I never actually went out and bought any for myself.
And then like you got Toy Story, and they're like, obviously they sold toys of the toys from Toy Story, but you know what I mean. Cars is oh, I just realized something.
What?
Couldn't they just make like a technically make a crossover movie with the Toy Story universe? Because like, what if like Toy Story 5 is like Lightning McQueen just show up because the kid owns a Lightning McQueen car?
They could do that. Oh, that's
It's
They could do
brilliant.
that, yeah.
Actually, here's a really weird thing. You guys know the Pixar theory, right?
Yeah.
That every movie is connected.
Yes. Question: Do you
Uh-huh.
guys know the YouTube channel Super Carlin Brothers?
I know they're
heard
the
of
people that
them.
popularized the theory. Yeah, I know that.
Yeah. Well, like a few months ago, they made a video explaining how the guy who plays Lightyear in the movie Lightyear is actually the guy who would become the car version of Lightning McQueen. As weird as that sounds, Buzz Lightyear is Lightning McQueen. If you want further explanation, watch the video.
That's not Owen
Okay.
Wilson.
Wow.
Either way,
I completely forget that it's Owen Wilson. Oh my god, I completely forgot that it was him.
all
Anyway,
right. So, yeah, Cars.
wait.
I'm down. I'm down. I have a soft spot for Cars.
Yeah, I think it gets too much shit. I think it's a good movie.
It's nostalgic.
Yeah. There was one more thing I want to actually mention with Cars.
We're not going to talk about planes.
No. I saw the first Planes. I have not seen the sequel. I
I
did
saw
not like
both.
the first Planes.
I saw both. I don't remember anything about either of them.
I remember one thing about planes, and that's the mentor plane was like a World War II fighter or something, and his entire platoon got killed, and I was like, what? Also, first of all, there's a Hitler car? What? Hold up.
If you think about the Cars movies for more than like a minute, yeah, it starts to fall apart, but just don't.
Yeah, it's the lore doesn't matter. It's
Turn off your brain. That's an order.
I didn't expect this to be the first John Lasseter movie we talked about, 'cause I know it's like this is kind of something we do. Anytime we do like a significant director, we either picked like the absolute like dumbest stuff we could from them, or like their most popular film.
No in between. That's just how we
Yeah.
roll.
Yeah, like first Pixar movie, we picked Turning Red. We don't pick any of like this popular ones. We don't pick Ratatouille. We picked Turning Red, and then
Hey!
we're like,
First
okay.
Spielberg movie we talked about was Jaws.
Like I said, it's either one of their most significant or the dumbest one. Like let's see, like David Lynch. Okay, we did all the significant ones there. David Fincher, we did the significant ones there. But like Robert Zemeckis, the first one we picked was The Walk, and I was like, good movie, but like it's definitely not like the first thing anyone thinks of when they hear Robert Zemeckis. And like even me with the Coens, I picked Burn After Reading first, and was like, that's no one's like first Coen movie. Anyway, this has been It's Always Sunny in Hollywood. Next week we will be watching Cars.
Ciao.
Have a good day. Yeah, ka-chow. We should probably save that for we probably should save that for next episode.
Probably. Spoilers.
That's not a spoiler. But yeah, okay, whatever. You can end the recording now.
Okay.